Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum. As you can see, once again back in my tasting room. For this evening's tasting, I thought it would be interesting to look at a distillery that I'm quite fond of, and so I guess you could say this is a tasting that's well overdue. That particular distillery is Bladnoch. Probably know, I'm a big fan of Bladnoch, and I would like to say a big thank you to Raymond Armstrong for supplying me with these samples that we're going to taste this evening, and numerous samples, shall we say, over the years, not just of the Bladnoch bottlings, but also the bottlings that he does for the forum. But before I get on and introduce the lineup for this evening, a bit of waffle as per usual. Basically, Bladnoch's had a fairly checkered past. It was mothballed along with a number of other distilleries back in 1993 by the then owners, Diageo. As I said, Raymond purchased the distillery, I think, in the late 1999 or early 2000. Originally with the plan of using it as holiday lets, because the distillery had been completely cleared out. There was practically nothing of any use in the distillery whatsoever. There was no casks, no nothing. So Raymond thought it's a nice place, could make some money doing holiday lets. But the inhabitants of Wigtown, where the distillery is situated, petitioned Raymond to basically get the distillery up and running again. Now, Raymond obviously had a love of whisky, but as far as I'm aware, not much knowledge in the way of how to actually distill it, or actually sort of renovate a distillery from scratch. And so if you've read a number of his postings on the Bladnoch blog, you'll see some of the trials and tribulations of getting the distillery up and running. So basically, Diageo eventually, relinquished the covenant that didn't allow him to do distilling on at Bladnoch, and so he started off, doing a small amount of distilling. I mean, there was, I believe, a cap on the amount of litres of alcohol that could be distilled in a year, but Raymond sort of set off to do it. Now, as there was no stock involved in the sale, Raymond obviously had to go out and purchase as much and as many casks of Bladnoch as he possibly could, which incidentally led to a rather, shall we say, well-known bottling called the Brownie of Bladnoch, which some of you, I imagine, probably purchased. Legend has it that this was a batch of casks that Raymond hadn't actually sampled and just basically vatted together, and well, it had this strange kind of olive, khaki, greeny, browny colour, hence probably why it was called the Brownie of Bladnoch. But that aside, Raymond has obviously picked up some amazing casks, and over the years has released these casks. So that leads me nicely on to tonight's little lineup. I thought we'd take a look at sort of Bladnoch from basically from year dot. This is a sample of new make spirit straight off the still. Was distilled in December of 2006. So that being Raymond's own personal spirit. This and the other three bottlings we have are effectively archive bottlings. Unfortunately, rummaging through the samples, I could only really come up with these, which were all released in May of 2010. But essentially, all the bottlings, apart from the distiller's choice, are essentially single cask bottlings. It's a case of when the line of 8-year-old or 10-year-old or whatever runs out, Raymond just bottles another cask. So this is 8-year-old spirit, bottled at 55%, aged in bourbon casks, and like I said, this was released back in May of 2010. So these two are obviously Raymond's own spirit from the time that he purchased the distillery. These two older samples are obviously from casks that he bought in. This particular one is a 16-year-old, again a bourbon cask, again bottled at 55%, and was released in May of 2010. And finally we have a 20-year-old. This was bottled at 52.4%, again bourbon cask, and released in May of 2010. So apologies that none of these are current bottlings, but hopefully this will give you an idea and a flavour of Bladnoch. So I think that's probably enough waffle, and shall we start some tasting then?
Tell me apart, I want you to know just why I've gone. I'll hold on to you.
Right, okay, shall we start with the new make? Obviously this is pretty much straight as it came off the still. I think I got this sample in about 2008, so it's been knocking around for a while, so hopefully it shouldn't have shown signs of decay, shall we say, but let's have a nose, shall we? Obvious new make, very quite pungent, but quite soft, oily, cereal notes. But there's a slight sort of perfumed character to it, a sort of a kind of a nascent first sort of stages of the Bladnoch character coming through. There's maybe a smidge of fusel oil, a little bit of rubber, but you know, all told, it's fairly light. It's quite sort of ethereal. And incidentally, I mean, you know, if you love your whiskies, I really encourage you to, you know, at least try a new make spirit from some distillery. I know that Bladnoch does effectively a new make version of the peated spirit that it does, called Bladnoch Do, or you've got things like the Glenglassaugh bottlings. And it's really interesting because you basically, this is the basis of the whiskey flavours. This is, you know, no oak character, and this is essentially, you know, as it comes off the still. So yeah, it's pleasant, but very young. So onto the palate then. That's 71.4% for you. That's got a kick. Lightly oily, cereally, quite youthful. Lot of alcohol, obviously. So you don't get really a great deal of character, it has to be said. So really think that needs a little drop of water. So really should have prepared for this, but back in a sec. Right, okay, so put a little drop of water in with it now, and we'll see what happens. Less oily now, less pungent, more sort of barley, a little bit of grist, but you're also getting, like I said, this sort of floral, slightly Turkish delight kind of character. Not quite so much as you would get with, say, something like Augentoschen, for example, which is triple distilled, which has a lot more of that sort of rose petally kind of Mar character. But you know, it's pleasant. So let's see what the palate does now. Lighter, softer. Like I said, a little bit of that sort of slight Turkish delight kind of character. Smidge of grass and sort of citrus fruit. Again, like I said, it's a pointer to sort of you know, where the spirit is going to lead. So really interesting, yeah.
Silly girl, I was only having fun. We were meant to be friends. You were never the one.
Right, okay, so let's take a look at the 8-year-old then, shall we? Like I said, this comes from 2010. Well, I don't think there's currently an 8-year-old out. I think it's a 9-year-old, I think, if memory serves me correct. But either way, you know, let's see what youngish Bladnoch conjures up then, shall we? A little bit of toffee oak, slight sort of toasted caramel, but there's a semblance. There's some pleasant sort of soft, slightly citrus fruit, little bit of spice, just a smidge, but it's quite heavy in actual fact. I did sort of wonder a few years ago, because the older sort of Diageo bottlings tended to be what I would consider classic Lowland. They were crisp, citrusy, grassy, and Raymond's Spirit seemed to be a little bit more on the sort of heavier side. I did wonder at the time what possibly could be causing that, and one of the things I thought that might have an effect on it was the fact that, in actual fact, Bladnoch doesn't actually have a wash still. Sorry, it doesn't have a spirit still, I should say. It has, Raymond uses 2 wash stills, which are fairly sort of short and stubby. So I wondered whether that was basically making the spirit itself quite sort of oily and more pungent, less and less lighter. As you know, spirit stills tend to sort of, not always obviously, have a taller neck, which sort of gives a greater reflux, which means that, you know, your spirit comes out lighter, whereas with sort of shorter necked stills you tend to get a more heavier, oilier spirit. So, but either way, this is really nice. Yeah, easygoing, quite charming. Little bit of a floral note coming out now. White flowers, a little bit of violet, rose possibly. Lovely spirit, really very, very nice. Right, okay, palate time then. Continuation of the nose, really. Fair amount of oak, lovely, lightly creamy, vanilla-y, quite dry, a bit of tannin, certainly with the combination of alcohol, a little bit dry at the finish, but it's got a lovely sweetness, a lovely soft vanilla character, some fleshy fruit, some apricot, a little bit of citrus, but you know, lots of bourbon oak. Lots of soft, creamy oak. I like that. That's a really nice palate. It's really sort of, like I said, really soft, mouth-filling. And let's stick a little drop of water with it and see what happens. Like I said, this is bottled at 55%. So let's see what cutting it down a little bit does for it, shall we? Younger now, there's certainly more of the sort of oily cereal character that we found in the new make, but it's more floral now. There's more sort of like white flowers, a bit of white fruit. The oak has kind of been pushed slightly to the background, although it's still there, still sort of a lovely creaminess to it. But the spirit is coming forward certainly now. So. Really nice, lovely sweetness. A lot more barley. Like the nose, it tastes a little bit younger now. A little bit more of that sort of rose petally kind of character. But still, you know, wonderfully soft. Got a lovely finish. Lovely aftertaste of sort of gentle spice and citrus and a little bit of grass. It's a lovely aperitif malt, it has to be said. It's a sort of malt you could kind of, you know, enjoy before dinner, or you know, in an afternoon session if you do that kind of thing. Unassuming, you know, really nice. Lovely, absolutely wonderful, really nice.
When I needed you most, you never knew me. You're just in love with a ghost.
Right, okay, let's take a look at the 16-year-old then. So this was distilled while Diageo were still the owners of the distillery. So we're expecting a slightly different style, a change of character possibly. But, you know, we'll see what the nose gives us. Quite a bit of oak again. That sort of toasted sort of caramel note. A bit lighter though, but still got some lovely fruit to it. Starting to show a bit of maturity, with sort of, you know, a more straw-like kind of character. Beautifully fragrant, really nice, wonderfully fragrant. Little bit of orange citrus, apricot. But that's lovely. I mean, you know, you just don't expect a lowland, which is relatively light in character, to age amazingly well. But I mean, they do. I mean, you know, I've tasted old Rosebanks, old St Magdalene, and obviously old Bladnoch, and you know, still alive and kicking. And you know, like I said, they tend to develop this kind of straw-like kind of character. But as long as it's got the sort of, you know, minerally citrus notes, you know, that kind of balance up that that sort of mature character, then that's great. I mean, I have tasted some that don't, that just seem to just taste old, but this is lovely. This has got a lovely balance. Okay, palate then. That's lovely. That's got some maturity. Again, sort of slightly straw-like apricots, and that sort of rose petally, kind of slightly Turkish delighty kind of character. Gently sweet. I mean, 55%. The alcohol is really soft. It's certainly not intrusive. Mouth filling. A little bit dry on the finish, but then that is the fact that it is 55%. But wonderfully full, lovely maturity. Again, sort of, you know, fairly easy going, but it's got some lovely complexity. We'll try it with a little drop of water, so I'll just put a little drop more in, and see what happens then, shall we? I don't think this is going to need water, but let's give it a go. It's creaking a little bit. It's gone quite oily now, and very straw-like. I didn't think this was gonna take to water particularly well. And this is often a problem with you know, very old, well, or relatively old malts. Certainly once you sort of water them down, they can start to sort of creak a bit. But you know, this is still pleasantly aromatic. The oak has kind of sort of disappeared a lot now, but you know, still pleasantly fragrant with that sort of rose petal character. Yeah, the palate is not quite as interesting as it is when it was neat. A little bit sort of watery, dare I say it. Again, that sort of rose petally character is hanging on there, but it's got a little bit oilier. The oak has kind of practically disappeared. So sort of neat. This was an absolutely superb bottling with water. It kind of like obviously shows up its age. But you know, that's whiskey for you.
Afraid of what?
Right, and finally the 20-year-old. Like I said, this was again from May 2010. Bottled at 52.4%. Incidentally, if you want to take a look at my tasting notes for these and obviously all of the other bottlings of Bladnoch that I've tasted over the years, they're available to peruse on my WordPress blog. Obviously the current distillery bottlings that we have in stock are on our website, www.gauntleys.com, including a couple of really pleasant sherry cask bottlings, I believe a 19-year-old and I think a 10-year-old, I think. Also available is a bottling called the Distiller's Choice, which is a vatting of various aged casks that Raymond does, which is a really nice introduction to Bladnoch, as it's not too expensive. So yeah, there's certainly a nice range of bottlings available. Should you wish to, you know, take a look at the Bladnoch range. So anyway, enough of that. Let's stick our nose in this the 20-year-old then, shall we? It's kind of like the 16, but slightly more amplified, more nuttier. Still a reasonable amount of oak and sort of toasted caramel, but it's kind of turned up a notch or two, not quite to 11 it has to be said, but really fragrant, really quite straw-like, mature, getting quite earthy now. A little bit of light coffee. You know, this definitely smells mature, should we say. Lovely nose though. I really like this. Bit of an alcohol prickle, but not too much. And again, really sort of fragrant. And you know, a nice clean oak character. Right, okay, palate then. Mature, quite full, a lot of old wood, sort of coffee, a little bit of hickory, old wood spices, earth, a little bit of dunnage, possibly a little bit of mushroom, straw. Yeah, this is old. This is venerable. This is probably about as old as Bladnoch really is going to get. I think sort of any older, sort of a few more years older, and I think this would have start to decay somewhat. But you know, this is a wonderful old malt, very unassuming, very relaxed. Little bit of bittering at the end, you know, a little bit of sort of alcohol. But that's lovely. I mean, if you like your light sort of bourbon aged mature malts, then you know Bladnoch is, you know, first rate. It has to be said. So we'll try it with a little bit of water and see what happens then, shall we? Really fragrant now. Lost some of its kind of earthy character, and it's certainly showing some really mature fruits. A lot of citrus now. A lot of citrus is coming through. That sort of lovely crispness. Quite orangey as well. A little bit of sort of perfumed orange. Sort of Strathmill kind of like. Oh, that is gorgeous. That has some beautiful depth. Oak is not quite so noticeable again, like on the previous bottlings. Putting a drop of water does seem to sort of push the oak sort of somewhere into the background, but oh, that's fragrant. That's gorgeous. That is a lovely bottling. I mean, I will say, I think I'm looking back at my past tasting notes on some of the 20-year-old casks that Raymond has bottled. They have been absolutely fantastic. One was a bit iffy, but But this is gorgeous. I think we've got a current bottling of 20-year-old in stock. Probably should have checked that before I did this video, I guess. I'm fairly certain we have, and that is absolutely spot on as well. This is the nads. This is gorgeous. Right. I like them. Delicate, elegant, little bit of granulated sugar now. Again, the oak is kind of like pushed to the back, so you've got quite a bit of straw-like fruit, citrus, old grass, kind of reeds, that kind of thing. Really mouth-filling, lovely, lovely balance. Like I said, sort of like a little bit sort of more granulated, sugary kind of now character now. But that is just still alive. That is just wonderfully fresh still for a 20-year-old lowland malt. Absolutely gorgeous. Really, really nice. I like that. I like that a lot. Right, okay, should we sum these up then? So what have we learned about Bladnoch? Lovely distillery, picturesque, produces some lovely spirit. Raymond Armstrong, class guy, he sends me lots of samples, so he's got to be, seriously, he's a lovely bloke. Mind you, getting in conversation, he'll talk behind legs off a donkey, it has to be said. But enough of that, anyway, back to spirit. So what have we found out? The youngest, the current sort of the new model Bladnoch, should we say, is quite a more sort of like, it's a thicker, sort of more pungent, more oily spirit than compared to say the older style of Bladnoch. Not a bad thing at all, wonderful clean spirit. Stick it in some good wood, and you get a wonderful soft. Fruity, well, relatively fruity, elegant malt, and absolutely wonderful when it's young. Ages amazingly well, as we've seen, but it would be interesting, obviously, to see how the current distillation in Bladnoch will actually age. Obviously, only time will tell on that, and if I'm still around in another sort of 10 years or so, still doing these blogs and what have you, then we'll obviously find out. But certainly the casks that Raymond's bottling at the moment of older Bladnoch are absolutely first rate, really spot on. I mean, when you think about it, he's been now doing it for as long as I've been in the whisky industry. So he's picked up one or two things along the way, and is probably not going to bring out a bottling like the Brownie ever again, I hope. But I really think that that Bladnoch is not anymore the archetypal lowland whiskey. I mean, it is a classic lowland, it has to be said, but it's not quite the sort of the archetypal lowland that you kind of think of being crisp, clean, grassy, almost to a certain extent, sort of a little bit of a sort of like a spey in certain respects, but it's still absolutely gorgeous, and I still think it's the quintessential lowland. I mean, you could argue that sort of Auchentoshan is, because traditionally it's still doing triple distillation and that kind of thing, but the trouble is they whack all their 12-year-old into sherry and just there you go, just obliterate the character of the malt, and sometimes Auchentoshan young Auchentoshan in bourbon is just devoid of character. It's distilled too much. It's just sort of rose petally mar and sort of not a great deal else, it has to be said. I've tasted sort of Auchentoshan from being sort of from new make right the way through. So basically, what am I saying? What I am saying is that Bladnoch is a great whiskey. It's a great malt. It's very much not quite a classic lowland, but it's certainly a lowland malt, and very, very enjoyable. So I think I've probably rambled enough, and hopefully I haven't bored you stupid over this. But like I said, if you love your whiskey, then you must buy Bladnoch. You've got to try it. This is just such a great whiskey. It's a great story, and every time you buy a bottle, you're supporting the small guy. You're supporting the independent against the big bad conglomerates of this world, and you're giving something to the community. So like I said, I think enough waffle. Like I said, buy Bladnoch. It's the thing to do. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the show, and all that's basically left to say is good evening and good ramming.